can Uber fly? Because they certainly want to fly. Over the last few years, they've been talking about introducing new modes of transport, including flying cars. So how realistic is that? What are the laws around it going to be? Tell you somebody who knows. Peter Marks from Axis Informatics and Claire Riley from CNET. Claire, Uber, flying, can they yet?
Give it a couple of years. Yeah, so I actually sat down with the Uber team a couple of months ago and they were like, oh, and obviously our Uber Elevate flying car initiative. And I was like, I'm sorry, you've made that up. You're lying. So I accused the Uber team of lying about one of their products and they were like, oh, no, it's actually real and we're meeting in Tokyo. So I said, fine, I'll call you on that bluff. I'm going to fly over to Tokyo and check it out. And so I went to their Elevate conference and I heard from a lot of seriously impressive people about their plans for personal aviation, air taxis, flying cars, eVTOLs. They don't have a name.
What's an eVTOL?
Electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. So that's the name that is given to these kinds of vehicles and aircraft, but it's really clunky.
I've seen a few of these things. They look like a sort of a helicopter-shaped pod, but off the side you've got something that very much looks like a giant drone, these sort of multiple propellers, like on four axes off the side. Is that a reasonable way of describing it?
Essentially you've got a kind of fuselage or body, much smaller than a traditional aeroplane, maybe the size of a personal aircraft. Multiple propellers that are capable of kind of taking off vertically. They might rotate around to give you forward thrust when you're in the air. They charge for short charges between trips, so they're designed for hopping around the city. So you might order an uberAir to a particular skyport, which is a rooftop, kind of like a helipad, and it'll jaunt you across and charge for about 5 to 8 minutes in between as it's reloading and unloading passengers. They say it's going to be significantly quieter, about 32 times quieter than a traditional helicopter because they use all kind of electronic parts inside rather than old gears and motors. The future is that they want to roll it out by 2022. They're planning to do the first tests in 2020. Then 2023, they will have a bunch of cities around the world, including LA and Dallas, and a third city doing trials. And then from there, they're just going to roll out.
Uber has a history of launching in places that do not have a regulatory framework for them to operate in and then lobbying/bullying their way into existence.
Toe stepping, I think they call it.
Lovely. I feel like this is one of those areas where people are going to be up in arms if they approach this technology in the same way, because it is just that much more scary, the idea of introducing an additional 2 axes to the driving experience. Yeah. So how do they intend to work with governments to have a regulatory framework that doesn't involve
the big problem
air crashes?
Here, of course, is air traffic control, which is a pretty conservative business at the moment. Planes
Probably
travel
for the best.
Well, maybe it is, but we're not using the technologies that you see in drones, where drones are, able to stabilize themselves, to interact with each other. The Intel stuff that they're using for sort of displays and everything. That's a technology that could be applied to air traffic control. At the moment, planes are controlled in a very manual sort of way. There's towers at every airport that control their airspace. There's proposals around to actually get rid of all those local towers and have a centralized air traffic control system. And then, of course, there's proposals which involves fitting out all aircraft to talk to each other. So imagine we suddenly had lots more things up in the air than we do now. And generally, you'll have one helicopter over the city or maybe 2 keeping clear of each other. If we had hundreds of those, plus delivery drones, medical emergency drones, there needs to be a whole leap in the way they are controlled. And basically what they need to do is talk to each other, be aware of each other. If they're heading towards a collision, they need to say, okay, you go up, I'll go down, and we'll avoid each other.
But computers are much better at doing that than humans are.
Exactly
And with
right.
things like 5G, which I think we've talked about on the show before, that kind of massive amounts of connectivity, loads more devices talking to each other at hyper quick fraction of an eye flicker seconds, that is going to be possible with 5G. So the FAA, which is the regulator in the US, they're already working on legislation for drones. Drones can stay out of the way of jets because they don't need to go up that high, really. They're working on different ways to deal with these kinds of new technologies, and I think they anticipate that this kind of technology is going to come. So they say, all right, how do we make it safe? How do we get it out and working and functioning in cities?
I really wonder, though, if the air taxi idea, which is basically to get away from traffic in cities, so saying that the need is that it's really slow to drive through the streets of whatever major city, so therefore an air taxi will get you there quickly, Mr. or Mrs. Business Person who's really busy. But if we have self-driving cars, then suddenly the traffic gets much better, there's less vehicles on the road, it gets faster, and of course they're self-driving, so you don't have to talk to the silly taxi driver.
I'm just going to say, because somebody has to say it, we hope. Yeah. All of the good things that we've said, we hope.
It's coming.
And
it's
look,
coming.
it's funny because Uber is actually actively contributing to congestion. You know, they are responsible for cars sitting idle on the street. They are responsible for, you know, researchers have said that when people take Ubers, they don't take public transport. So congestion is getting worse, in part because of companies like Uber and Lyft. There was a paper from a university in Boston that discovered that the convenience and lower price and option for pooled rides and stuff, it is different to the taxi industry markedly. And so
Uber's so cheap over in Boston, particularly the multi-ride one.
Yeah.
It's like a couple of dollars. They must be losing a huge amount of money. But I was astonished just last week. You order an Uber, it's there in like 60 seconds and they actually text you and say it's going to be there now and we will start charging you in 120 seconds.
Yeah.
It's so quick. It's scary.
efficient, and you need that kind of scale to make something like this work. But they're adamant that it's going to happen, and they're adamant that it'll work because they don't just have Silicon Valley people. They've got people from NASA, they've got people from Tesla who are used to doing things conservatively and, you know, getting stuff done.
And one thing is for certain, the way we travel is about to change. All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast. To download this show, you can find it on any good podcasting app, and frankly, even some of the mediocre ones. We'll see you there. Bye.